And we're on. So let's have a look at what we're going to be discussing today. So I'm going to do a really quick overview on Nitro. Don't worry, this isn't 5 slides on who we are and what we're trying to sell, but I appreciate that a lot of you may not have heard of us before, so I thought it's good to set the scene. Overall, I really want you to come away from this webinar thinking about how your business can become more sustainable by looking at your processes a bit differently. As I mentioned, we'll start with a brief intro of Nitro, and then we'll look at the trends followed by the challenges that these trends present. And lastly, we'll summarize these into 4 key takeaways that you can start doing today. So Nitro, we've been founded in Australia since 2005, so we really pride ourselves on our Aussie roots. We have a global headquarters now in San Francisco and EMEA headquarters in Dublin. So all in all, we've got about 200 employees across 5 locations. And a lot of companies come to us or know about us as the leading alternative to Adobe Acrobat. So I'm sure a lot of you on the line today are familiar with Acrobat. The most common thing we hear is, God, I hate Adobe, it drives me mad, I hate the updates, it's so expensive. And we are a really leading solution in the alternative space for PDF. We also have industry-leading 97% customer satisfaction. Again, something we really pride ourselves on is our customer satisfaction. We have, sales and customer support sitting side by side. So if we are onboarding a large customer, there isn't that breakage between when the person is sold and when they get onboarded. And they really are an exceptional team. And we're also the global PDF solutions partner of choice for Lenovo. So if any of you have Lenovo, your default reader will be Nitro, and you'll also have the option there to take a trial with us. But really, sustainability is at the heart of what we do. We're actually an award nominee for the European Week of Waste Reduction based on the activity that we've been doing in the lead up to this big week. I recently spoke at the Sustainability Summit in Dublin's Aviva Stadium. And obviously we have the webinar today. But we're also going out planting trees ourselves. So myself and the girls on the team are going out to plant trees next Tuesday as part of our Nitro Gives initiative, which is, multifaceted, give back to the community. We've done canal bank cleanups, all of these kind of things. So again, really a part of who we are and what we do. So with that, let's move over now to what are the trends that are pushing organizations to address how they currently manage content and document processes. So we can categorize these trends into 3 main buckets: content growth, content sprawl, and divergent workflows. Looking just at content growth, CSC.com estimate that data production will be 44 times greater in 2020 than in 2009. It's a staggering figure, and I think, at some level we're somewhat conscious of this number being huge, but when you see it in print, 44 times greater in 2020, and that's only 5 years down the line, not even than it was in 2009, it's really significant. And it's not just the one area of business that's causing this level of growth. Everyone from sales and marketing and finance and legal are contributing to this. And we're all familiar with the concept of content sprawl and that familiar BYOD or work from home, culture that we all have. So we're now accessible before work, after work, in transit, and companies as well as employees are therefore expecting relevant content to be accessible wherever they are. This leads to the sprawl of content being stored in multiple locations. So you have it on a SaaS device, sometimes it's on the personal computer, sometimes it's on the company network, and then indeed paper. And the last of these trends is divergent workflows. So what I mean here is there are great tools out there which aim to make collaboration easier, such as Slack or Huddle. But the result is often confusion due to poor process guidelines around how to use these effectively. And I'd say even in your own company, each team or each sub-team has different interpretations on how these should be used. So we will get there. It will get easier, but at the moment there is a little bit of confusion that's driving this. So what are the challenges then that these trends are creating for businesses? I want to start with the one that we're mainly focused on today, which is sustainability. And as the title suggests, sustainability is being eroded versus being improved. Having said that, the good news is that corporate responsibility is a top priority for CEOs, with 49% classifying it as a top 3 initiative and 13% classifying it as their number 1 initiative. And there's plenty of good reason for this. Not only does it align with company goals, missions, or values, but it can also help build, maintain, or improve corporate reputation. And despite what we might have all thought, the cost-cutting benefit is only actually a quarter of the reason why organizations address sustainability. In fact, while cost-cutting was the primary factor in 2012, it's been replaced by a desire to integrate sustainability with overall company culture and targets. So the kind of adage that people are only really taking notice of this is because they want to cut costs is really gone. I think consumers are becoming more savvy around the products that they're purchasing, and if it comes down to, well, is this brand in line with my own personal views on sustainability or not, that can be a real decision maker for companies and for individuals. So when we look at the core sustainable initiatives, document management plays a role in 2 core areas, namely in the reduction of energy use and then the reduction of waste creation. At Nitro, we're particularly interested in the reduction of waste at source, i.e. a paperless environment. But what does paperless really mean? So paperless initiatives have many benefits, as you see below, but there's a common misconception that paperless means absolutely no paper in the office. But what we're focused on is reducing the amount of unnecessary paper that's created through poor document practices. And I really will say that we practice what we preach. We recently moved offices, and a colleague of mine commented that in her last company, she had just so much paper to move that it was box upon box, whereas this time it was like pens, notebooks, and a few pictures. So it was a lot easier. And I mentioned at the start that I recently spoke at this sustainability summit in Dublin, and the amount of people who came up to me who are very active in this space, you know, who are looking at climate change and how they can affect it, have said to me, you know, the amount of time I spend at the printer fighting with it, first of all, because usually it's out of paper or it's out of ink or there's somebody in front or there's a jam, to print out documentation around what are best practices to promote and improve climate change initiatives. So it's just very ironic. In case you needed any more stats on just why the reduction of paper is important to trees, here are a few. You can feel free to use any of these stats in this presentation today to build out business justification plans that you have. That's really what this is about, is to help you in your org. So simply put, if the current rate of deforestation continues, it'll take less than 100 years to destroy all the rainforests on the earth. And sometimes I think it's a bit, we think of the impact on the environment as something that's outside of our control, but if we can start to employ even some of these best practices internally, it does absolutely have a knock-on effect, and it really only takes 1 or 2 to kind of start driving this. So when you understand then the energy that's consumed to power what are considered basic office tools such as printers and the paper that goes with it, it's easy to see why a reduction in both of these areas is a benefit to any organisation that really cares about sustainable business practices. I think this stat particularly was very interesting to me, is that to just produce 1 ton of copy paper is the equivalent of the energy that's used in the average household in 10 months. I mean, that's just crazy. I think we probably had the same box of paper here for the last 6 months. And so it is a possibility. Saving space then is a great byproduct of moving to a paperless office, but I think there's a bonus that will really sweeten the case internally, and let's face it, that is money. So look at some of these stats. $1.12 to print a piece of paper, $120 to search for a misfiled document. All these kind of things that we know, nodding our heads, we've all done. So even if you just thought about your own organisation and how many pages they print at an average cost of $1 plus per page, it sounds like something we'd all like to reduce. We actually had a customer who told us that they print 6 million pages a year. So even if you're not a maths genius, 6 million odd is a nice bit of cash to be putting back into the bank at the end of the year. And I just love this stat out of everything. So the fact that one company could save 30 million in filing cabinet leasing costs alone by going paperless, it just seems crazy. I mean, I probably have never worked in a company big enough to think that anyone would spend 30 million on filing cabinet lease costs. But yep, Owen Cornings saved that by going paperless. So in conclusion, here's what we've learned. It's a top priority for 50% of CEOs, and that reducing paper is a powerful first step in reaching the goal of moving towards a more sustainable organisation. But what are some of the other challenges that the trends of content growth, sprawl, and divergent workflows present? Well, another one of these is productivity. It's estimated that a fifth of organisational productivity is being robbed by document challenges. Why is that? So it comes down to a lack of access to the right tools, and it's a really big factor, specifically when it comes to PDFs, and this is the most ubiquitous file format on the planet. As the stat shows, 57% of employees in companies of less than 100 employees do not have access to a PDF editor, and this increases to 74% in companies of greater than 100 employees. I actually did this exact question at the summit 2 weeks ago, and I had people raise their hands, and it absolutely stacks up in any environment that probably 20 to 30% of people are actually able to either read or edit PDFs. And as I mentioned at the start, we do have a poll running today. So if you'd like to just click on the poll and answer those 2 quick questions. Do you have PDF editor rights? Do you have PDF reader? That would be really great. But why does this all matter? So, well, simply put, PDFs, while the most ubiquitous file format, without editor capabilities leads to productivity challenges, particularly when it comes to editing. And 30% of our survey respondents classified it as their leading challenge. And looking at this from a workflow perspective, we really see how convoluted processes become without sufficient PDF editor functionality. And if we were all in a room together right now, I'd be asking how many of you find yourself in this scenario. You receive a document, which you and your boss need to sign. Most of the time, it's actually for internal approval, so it's not even going outside of your organization. Think of your POs or insertion orders, things like that. So what do? You go and print it, which involves making sure the printer has paper, making sure it has ink, making sure it doesn't jam, and making sure there isn't a queue. Then you drop it over to your boss for her to sign. Fingers crossed she's not away or in meetings all day. She signs it eventually, then you scan it, and then you email it to whomever internally needs to see that signed approval. I think we can all safely say that if somebody gave you a tool that made all of that a lot easier, wouldn't it be better? And again, I just want to show you what typical Nitro users use their Nitro license for every day or week. So they edit a document up to 5 times a week. They request collaborators to a document once a week. They request signatures twice a week, signing a document 6 times, and adding notes. We actually use it fully for our internal PO process. So one of the interns on my team will create the PO. She'll send it to me for signing, and she can set signing orders. So if it's over a certain threshold, she can also add my boss. And then she adds in our accounts department to insert the PO and final approval. My boss works on the west coast of the US. So if she has it over to me by 3:59, I can sign it. And he usually comes online by 4 p.m. He'll have signed it by 4, and then it goes to accounts by 4 and 10 seconds. So it's a really nice alternative world to work. I've heard of people who save their files so that every week when the person flies in from their office located somewhere in Europe, that they're there ready to sign. So you're talking at least a week sometimes of getting things signed. So if we look at these now, we can see that it's estimated that improvements in this area can lead to a 36% increase in revenues and a reduction of costs in approximately 30%. I don't think any of your business leaders could argue with that. So the last of the 3 challenges is going to be security. So it probably comes as no surprise that when it comes to protecting from internal risks, security is a top initiative for organizations. And from looking at these stats, we can see why. But how many of you think of security within the context of your document workflows? Think about it. Paper creates risk because it can end up anywhere. I recently heard of case files being left on printers for all to see. And it's estimated, I think, 30% of paper is not collected. So if you do a print job, 1 out of 3 are never collected. So that could be anything from, like a presentation that's only restricted to certain levels within the org. It could be somebody's CV details. It could be got bank details, anything like that. So workers are also using unqualified conversion sites to convert documents from the likes of PDF to Word, just to simply get around common day productivity issues. And the sharing of files internally, externally creates risk, as does the lack of visibility or traceability of who ultimately has access to these files. And again, if I was to ask any of you, do these sound like your org, you're probably going to nod your head. So if we know these are all potential security risks, why does it still happen? Well, simply put, it's become the status quo. Over half of people out there still print to sign and a third print to review. Many just accept that this is the way it has to be done. But when you consider the following, that nearly a quarter of all major breaches and 2/3 of small breaches involve paper, then it pretty much would seem like a really good time to start changing that. And the good news is that leaders are recognizing that by improving document security, they're likely to see a 23% reduction in their exposure to risk. So they say is knowing you have a problem is half of the problem. So I think it's a good start. I think we'd obviously want to see that increases, but as I said, it's a good start. So let's recap now. The three trends that are impacting company performance, as we mentioned, are the content growth, content sprawl, divergent workflows. And these are presenting challenges not only for sustainability, but also in the areas of productivity and security as well. So what can you do? Here are 4 things you can start doing today. You can use today's presentation to build out your case for providing workers the access to the right tools. Both personally and professionally, you can eliminate paper wherever you can. Specify best practice collaboration guidelines and invest in a smart documents platform. And by that, I mean a platform that allows you to interact with documents seamlessly. And that's it. So if you'd like to check out more, you can visit us at gonitro.com. You can tweet us at NitroHQ. I think my details as well were at the start of this presentation and on the footer slide. So again, you'll have this as part of the recording. But I'm now going to hand you over to Elizabeth in We Ireland to talk about what they're doing to support and promote sustainable business practices. So Elizabeth, let's hope this works. I'm going to give you the keyboard. Elizabeth, are you all right there?
I'm fine. Thank you very much. Good morning to everyone. I'm just waiting for that slide to come up for me while I introduce myself. I'm Elizabeth O'Reilly and I'm the Compliance Manager for We Ireland, which stands for Waste Electrical and Electronic Equipment Ireland. And talking to you today from the other side of Dublin. If I go up and stand on the roof and wave, I can probably see you, Rebecca, but we're just over the other side of the M50. So I'm just waiting for those slides to come up to me, Rebecca. So I'm just going to click again. Hang on 1 second. We'll get through this.
You can always do a...
Now, have we got those loaded up in the... Now, I don't have that slide deck up. I still have yours up. Now, here we go. Great. Thank you. So, as I said, Elizabeth O'Reilly is my name, Compliance Manager for We Ireland, and we're an Irish compliance scheme for producers of electrical equipment and batteries. We're a not-for-profit organisation, and we represent 850 producers who are at the top of the supply chain onto the Irish market, and they range in size from large global blue-chip OEMs to small local importers of electronic equipment and batteries. And as Rebecca referred to, we're working in a European context because we work under the WEEE Directive and the Batteries Directive. So many of our producers in Ireland are also working across Europe under the same circumstances, and I hope that this information will apply across that route as a result. Now,
is it progressing for you, Liz?
No, it's not, I'm afraid.
No, I'll do it. I'm sorry about that. You just let me know.
There we go.
We'll keep it casual.
So we're going to... the wonders of technology. So I'm going to jump straight into what I'm going to talk about in terms of takeaways. The graphic shows you what the information from the recent UN report on electrical waste in Europe, that we're generating 11 million tons of electronic waste in Europe every year. This is a stat from 2014, and it's the highest amount per inhabitant in the world, 15.4 kilograms per person. And if we think of what we're watching this presentation on, the phone that we probably have to hand, the presentation and connection technology that's in your boardrooms when you go home, everything that you turn on with a plug, a switch, a battery. Technology is a huge part of our lives and has made it better in so many ways. But what we're dealing with is the whole life cycle impact of that technology and what we do when it becomes waste. So it is always good for the environment and human health to manage electrical and battery waste responsibly. It does prevent hazardous waste pollution. And going back to a lot of what Rebecca was talking about, it does make good economic sense, which always helps when you're trying to put a new sustainability strategy in place in the workplace. Promoting a circular economy and better resource efficiency is where we're all working towards in the recycling world. It's not just a case of putting something through a general shred machine and getting a bit of metal out at the end. We're trying to hone this more and more so that critical raw materials that make our technology can be urban mined out of sophisticated recycling processes. So that piece of legislation that we work under in the directive is really designed to bring high quality recycling and standards into both the workplace and home environment when we're recycling our waste at its end of life. Which means everybody has responsibilities in the directive. So whether it's, as we said, the phone that's in your pocket that's your own, or whether that's the laptop you might use for business but that you might inherit when your company is changing over to a new round of technology, you have responsibilities in managing that at its end of life. And in my world, recycling and preparation for reuse activities need to be authorised and certified to a recognised standard. And if not, why not? One of the biggest bugbears I have is perhaps organisations that might have the word recycling in their name or in their flyers or in the emails they send you, but it's not backed up by certifications, by permits and licenses. And if it's not, why not? Please always ask and do your due diligence checks when you're taking on a new contractor in the waste world, whether that's in paper recycling or electronic recycling or any others. And again, do we always need to buy new? So we're talking here,
Elizabeth,
you need as many printers, you don't need as many photocopiers. Maybe there's another organisation or a sister organisation that can use those. And if we can reuse or repair or refurbish what's already, that's what we're going to look at. And don't look at just the big items. I suppose small items that arise in the workplace, we're all about trying to capture those smaller items that can go into the bin. And we'll go down there, Rebecca.
So it should be there with you now.
That's great. So, as I said, the Directive 2002/96 EC was a new direction in electrical waste management. And while most of us talk about it in terms of recycling and recovery, its priority aim was the prevention of waste, as well as improving the quality of there, and it's seeking to involve all stakeholders and operators in it. And this is a European-wide directive. It's been implemented differently across the different member states, but the main intentions are binding, and it has really been a leadership across the globe in how waste electronic equipment has been worked on and developed, and that many of the systems now that people are looking at, perhaps in developing federal laws in the US, are being based on the European directive. I'm going down very quickly to what we were talking about there in terms of just responsibility. And as a compliance scheme, this is sort of this word cloud is what our producers have to deal with in terms of all of the connections around the WEEE directive, their supply chain management, and the associated legislation for eco-design directive, restriction of hazardous substances, REACH, producer responsibility. So there's an awful lot that needs to be looked at when you're both, say, a producer, a reseller, a retailer, distributor, and user of electrical equipment. And that crossed out wheelie bin symbol in the middle of it kind of summarizes all of it. Don't put it in the bin, please manage it responsibly. What we've done, I suppose, as an organisation is over the last 10 years, we've recycled more than 250,000 tonnes of waste electrical material, sending it through an authorised recovery process. And just putting that into reality, that's about 50,000 truckloads of electronic waste. And in Ireland, we're recycling now about 50% of the weight of the household electrical equipment that goes on the market. And we do that through a network of collection points in shops, workplaces, schools, and more around the country. But if we look at the European situation, and this slide is taken from the Eurostat results, which are readily accessible online from the EU Commission's page, we'll see there sort of Ireland in the middle, not blue with old electrical. That dark blue line there, and it's mirrored in all of the countries around Europe, is the business waste, the professional waste equipment. So what maybe is in your organisation, and perhaps that you're thinking of moving on, or if you're buying new equipment that you're going to be replacing, where is that business electrical waste going? We're really not seeing it in the results, and from my perspective as compliance manager, if it's not being reported, if it's not being put into the National Waste Database, it's not being put through an authorised system, and it needs to be managed responsibly. And that's your responsibility as an organisation, as much as the producers that sell you that equipment. The new directive that we're working on now since 2012 is all about resource efficiency and standards. And again, it's moving away, I suppose, from a traditional waste industry of maybe a man in a van piling up everything in the back, maybe giving you a couple of euro for it, or maybe giving you a docket to say it's been recycled, and he drives off into the sunset and you never see what happens again. So it's much more about line of sight and due diligence and knowing where your waste electrical equipment is going and what has happened to it. The European Directive requires high collection targets to drive us all do more and collect more, higher recycling and recovery rates, and references a minimum quality standard for treatment. In Ireland and in the Netherlands, those standards were actually made mandatory. So in terms of being a European leader, Ireland and the Netherlands are leading in that regard, putting those standards in place and requiring electronic recyclers to meet these standards if they're going to operate in this area. And that means that all separately collected waste has to be treated to this Wheelavix standard, and in another 12 months that will actually be superseded by a European-wide EN standard which the Senelec committee have worked on. And what that means for you as an organisation is, again, well, what are we going to do with the equipment we have?